October 23rd, 1983.
Yes, sir.
So it was the Marine barracks at the Beirut airport.
Right.
There was a massive bomb that was detonated by a terrorist organization. Killed 200 Marines, I believe 18 sailors, 3 soldiers, something along those lines.
Yes.
Massive attack. Massive casualties. Where were you that day?
You've been trained, Taylor. You don't think, you act. For the safety of others. For the safety of life, to get ready, to breathe. Protect yourself, protect others. Until you see it. Until you see bodies. Your brothers. Cats that you knew. Brothers you played ball with. That you high-fived with. That you borrowed a cigarette from. That you sat on the end of the ship and looked at the stars and talked about life. And what you want. Who you want to marry. How many kids you want. How your girl left you. Did you get a letter today? Life. Dreams. Hopes. And you know who they are. From the rings, from the tattoos. Your brothers. Keith Hairston.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Oh, there we go.
Oh, man. Keith Hairston, welcome to the Veterans Voice Podcast. How's it going, man?
Good, Taylor. Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come speak, share your message, share your story. It's quite an elaborate one, so I'll do my best to cover it in about an hour and a half, but I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit.
Sounds good, man.
Let's just go ahead and do a little bit of an introduction. Who is Keith Hairston today?
Okay. First and foremost, I always like to say it's good to be here, and it's great to be alive, Taylor.
That's true.
Yeah, always. I consider myself a man of honor, and it's been a good journey. It's been a long journey. It all began for me. I'm a military brat. Father is retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. I was raised by a strong family. A family of 3 siblings. I'm the middle child. My sister is older, who's a doctor, and I've got a younger brother who is very spiritual and into the church. Father, like I mentioned to you, career military man, and a mother, a stay-home mother, who was my heart. Childhood, Taylor, was a little difficult for me. And the reason I say that is being from a biracial family. Father was black, mother was white. And I dealt with identity problems. And when I say identity problems, I'm talking about, and if anyone can relate out there in the audience, being a military brat, you're stationed in one place for about 4 or 5 years and you're packing up and you're moving to another location.
Yeah, in some very key developmental years of your life, there was no consistency.
Absolutely.
Moving around a lot.
Absolutely. And the identity, of being, biracial and moving to different cities back in the 60s and early 70s, racism was still strong.
Yes.
And, I was a happy-go-lucky kid, We would live in one area of a city. We may be biracial. I had black friends. I had white friends. And I was just trying to grow up as a kid. And, people would look at me differently because I was light-skinned and curly hair. And, and I took that as that I was different, right? So, I would go home and I would get quiet, wouldn't talk to anyone about it. And I took into those feelings and emotions a little bit. And then eventually we went overseas. My father was stationed in Europe and on military bases. And that's when I vibe. That's when I gel, because it's one big family on a military base, right?
Leading up to that, what were some of the cities and states you were in?
States were St. Louis, outside of Washington, D.C. and Maryland, Texas. Texas was difficult for some reason. I'm not sure why. But
Yeah.
Washington, a little bit older, still young. Texas, I was getting older. I was about 10 or 11 years old. And then we took the trip to Europe.
And how was that?
It was actually fun, man. We went to, our first stop was Spain, Madrid, Spain, Torrejon Air Force Base. Some Air Force vets may be familiar with it, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, I've heard. It sounds beautiful.
Oh, man, it was absolutely gorgeous. And I took it real well because kids were just happy-go-lucky like I was. They didn't see color. Had many friends. And that's when I started getting into sports. I started getting taller, if you will. I got involved with basketball, got in with football, started getting involved with girls. And, I just had a great childhood over there. Yeah. But, it was that military base life. And I'm sure some of the audience in the military base can relate to that because it's one big family, right? From Torrejon, we went to Turkey, Incirlik Air Force Base, and I'm sure folks are familiar with that base. And Incirlik was fun as well. Incirlik was one big family. I was a little bit older then. I was 12, 13, 14, starting to branch out and, really, really vibe with everyone. I got my first 10-speed and was all over the base, man. And
was it an Audi?
Oh, you know it.
I love Audis, man.
You know it, brother.
I've had a couple.
You know it. So, we're just all over the base, talking to people, enjoying life, spending the night with friends. Man, it was, and this is all, and I have to go back, this is all during the Vietnam War. Back in the early 70s. My father took this tour in Europe because he had a choice. He had a choice either to go to Europe or go to Vietnam. And he always used to tell me, they asked him once, and next time they're going to tell him to go, right? You know what I mean? So, instead of choosing Vietnam, he chose this tour to take his family with him. And I think it's the best thing we could have done because I really grew up, right? I really grew up on bases. But from Incirlik, then we went up north Turkey to a place called Karamsel. That base is closed now. For the last, I think, year and a half, my dad was in Turkey, and this is right before the Vietnam War was ending, around 74, 75. I was about 14, 15 years old, and Karamsel was just perfect. I got into music, started playing the trombone and the sax, and, I'm from a music family, and, I was doing sports at the same time. It was a high school there. My sister was a junior in high school. And it was time then to go. Nam was over. My dad was getting close to retirement as well. And he just really stated that we needed to go home so I could really see the United States, so I could grow.
Right.
I was pretty good in sports. And he would always tell me, recruiters need to see you, son. You can play ball. So we moved to Texas. We moved back to Texas. And Texas was different, if you will. It was Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
And I was back to that reality of racism, if you would. And when I say that, I wasn't from Texas. There's certain cliques in Texas, a lot of kids known each other from elementary. They gone to the same high school, and here comes this new kid, this ball player. Who's he? He's different. He's new. And it affected me because I wasn't accepted, right? And I had a few friends, but I just Taylor, I couldn't understand the racism.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand whites sticking with whites and blacks sticking with blacks. Blacks living on one side of the railroad tracks and whites living on the other. It really was. It was that way. Back in 76, 77 when we moved. And here I am, happy-go-lucky. And thank God for sports, because with sports and the team factor, when we played ball, football, or basketball, it was just, we were gelling as a team. But when practice was over, when the game was over, then there was classes. It was, what do you do on the weekends? And I just didn't feel comfortable. I never got bullied. I was a pretty big kid. I could, I could take care of myself, but I was confused, right? So we stayed in Fort Worth for a little while. My dad retired. He took a position with the Department of Agriculture as an inspector general for him. And we moved to Central Texas, a place called Temple, Texas. And Temple was another small town in Texas where, very, very small, where one high school, where everyone knew each other. Here comes this new kid. Played ball for Temple, had a powerhouse football team. I started to stick with just basketball, and I elevated myself through basketball. But I started experimenting with marijuana and drinking, okay? Couldn't really stand the drinking, but the high school was just full of weed. You know what I mean? It was just, all the high schoolers were smoking weed.
In the 70s.
70s, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I started experiencing it, and it wasn't for me at first because I was an athlete, right? And I remember the coach saying, if y'all get caught with any type of marijuana on campus or, at that time it was really any urinalysis, but it was more of, if you get caught, and it was all in the parking lot, they were smoking it between breaks, and, I'm kicking you off the basketball team. So I stopped.
Yeah.
I completely stopped. I was like, man, I'm an athlete. I was pretty good at it. Second team all district. And I was gelling a little bit, and that in itself made me a little comfortable, and I was getting accepted because I was a pretty good ball player, right?
Yeah.
I was getting a couple girlfriends here, you know what I mean? But I still felt, Taylor, uncomfortable at the end of the day, because they knew my mother was white. They knew my father was black. And I could hear whispers, right? And I'll be honest with you, man. Some days, I'd be on one side of the street with my white friends and with my black friends, and people would talk. I remember having a white girlfriend and the black girls not liking it, and vice versa, having a black girlfriend and the white girls didn't like it. So I was confused, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it confused me. But from there, graduated high school. I got a basketball scholarship. I went to SMU, Southern Methodist University in Dallas. Not long, I got up there. First couple of practices, I blew my knee out.
You still living at home at this point?
Still actually living with my mother, who had stayed in Temple. My father, reason why we were living in Temple, he was working out of Houston for the Department of Agriculture, and he would come home on the weekends. But yeah, we were still living at Temple, and SMU's in Dallas. I had a grandmother and aunt in Fort Worth, so I was commuting back and forth. I had a car my dad gave me, so I was really staying with my aunt, my grandmother in Fort Worth, and then coming home on the weekends in Temple.
Yeah, because I want to ask you, there's a lot of instability, like you said, a lot of moving, a lot of identity crisis situations, being half black, half white, moving around new cities, new schools, new friends, at least trying to make them. How is your home life? How is your relationship with mom, dad, siblings?
Good question, brother. Good question. If you know anything about a military-minded man, he was a great father. I'll put it that way. Very strict, very demanding, but very providing. And he was so busy with his career and on the road, back and forth from Houston. He was an investigator. He was always gone at different times of the day. A lot of times he wouldn't make it my games. So I reached out to my mother. I was more closer to my mother than anything. Actually, matter of fact, she was my heart and soul. I would talk to my dad. on occasions, but, he was the patriarch of a family that, that jailed together.
Mm-hmm.
We had dinner at the table when he was home. We talk about family matters, but I wasn't the one to share what was really going on.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Was this a conversation within the family at all, or no?
No. I mean, my sister knew. My sister was in college at North Texas State, so she would come home on the weekends. And I am so very close to my sister to this day. And she would see me out in the back of the house crying sometimes, or just shooting my ball, and by myself, and just ask me what was going on. And I would share with her. I would share the truth with her, that I was uncomfortable, because I would always ask her, did she have any problem with coming back from overseas and adjusting? And it was easy for her. I don't know why. It was easy for my younger brother. She said that she did cope a little bit with, with being accepted and color, but I was the lightest in my family, right? Light like my mother. My sister was medium complex. My brother was medium complex, but I was very, very light. Not that made any difference, but I just think they got, my brother was so young that he didn't really know any better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just wanted some friends and, some candy. And he was good, you know what I mean? But my sister was older, very beautiful, by the way. So everybody was hitting on her, men, so she was getting loved all the time, so very good in school, 4.0 student. So she didn't have the problem as much as I did, right? But I did talk to her about it.
Mm-hmm.
And she would tell me to hang in there. She would tell me, that to learn to deal with it, to cope with it. And, at the time, being as young as I was, still 17, 18, all I wanted was to be accepted, right? I was being accepted on the basketball floor, but I just wasn't being accepted anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right? And it was being called names. I mean, I got into a few fights. I did. But at the same time, I didn't want to destroy what I was building on the basketball court, right?
Yeah.
I knew I was getting looks. I knew I was getting scholarships. So, within the family, my mom knew, but I wasn't totally honest with her. She could tell I was struggling because, Taylor, believe it or not, my mother being white, married to a black man, had experienced that already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine.
And you can imagine, man.
Yeah.
They got married back in the 50s.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So,
different times.
Right.
Much
different times, brother. So, and they were very strong individuals,
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a no-no,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Texas. And my father was born in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And, our family, his side of the family, my mother's side of the family, which was white anyway, they loved my dad. They accepted my dad. He was a good man. But my mother had her issues with being accepted, married to a black man. But the way my mother dealt with it, screw him. She was like, she'd tell me, baby, I don't even worry about him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Good motherly advice.
You know what I mean? She was just like,
yeah.
She drink her gin and tonic and be good. Seriously, man. I mean, she was that kind of mother, man.
Yeah.
She was just, she was happy-go-lucky. She was the sweetest woman. And I'm not saying this just because of my mother, but when she died 14 years ago, Taylor, man, people were coming into the church. There was a line wrapped around the church, brother,
Wow.
to see her viewing. I'm looking over my shoulder going, who are these people?
Mm-hmm.
And my mother touched so many lives, man.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing. But so I'd reached out to my mom, and then when I got to school, when I got to college, that was completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I got a rude awakening, so to speak. And when I say a rude awakening, I got a rude awakening of the basketball court, that I wasn't the best that I thought I was going to be. You know, there's other talented players. Yes, I did get a scholarship, but I'm just not going to be a starter. I've got to play my heart out to make this team still. And the other rude awakening, how big school was, how many different colors people were, and it was fast, right? It was people trying to get to class, drugs, weed was definitely there. It was all over the place, you know, in the dorms, but I was an athlete, right? But I really start getting accepted more in college. I could see that. One, because I was an athlete. Everybody respected the athletes in college, right? You know what I mean? All the girls anyway. So it was fun, man. I mean, I really grew up real fast until one day in practice, I landed. Was going up for a dunk or a rebound. I can't recall now. Somebody undercut me, and I landed right on my knee.
Oh, man.
I mean, and I just basically split the knee, in half. Mm-hmm. And that was it. I couldn't walk. I had to rehab. Was in a cast for almost a year. They didn't pull the scholarship. They were just more of rehab it. But when that happened, Taylor, that's when I really found marijuana.
Yeah, you started self-medicating.
Yeah. Because I thought I could make the NBA. I thought, I thought that I could be a pro. I mean, people were telling me that I was that good. I got an opportunity to play with a lot of guys who were in the NBA in tournaments. I got to see Michael Jordan. You can see I'm a big Jordan fan.
Big supporter.
Big supporter, man. And I remember seeing him play at North Carolina. I was like, who is that? This kid, I mean, was like... Mm-hmm.
Was he right in your age group then?
A little bit younger than me.
Okay.
A little bit younger than me.
Same era.
Yeah, same era though. Wow. Michael was a freshman. I was a sophomore. And, we had gone to a summer tournament or right before tournaments, and I was sitting on the bench. So my injury didn't happen until my second year, actually, not my first year.
Okay.
Let me correct that. It was my second year I was in school. And so, I got an opportunity to play against the best, or practice against the best, some of it anyway. And I saw what I wanted to become. I mean, I would practice hard, I would play hard, and I wanted to be one of the best until that injury, right? Mm-hmm. So after the injury, self-medicating to feel better, the pain of the injury, mentally and physically, mm-hmm. more mentally, because I just didn't think I would be the same.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really account for that. You're pursuing this goal of being the NBA, being the best basketball player you can be, and then because you're going hard in that pursuit, you end up getting injured. No, I don't think any athlete or anyone pursuing, a physically demanding pursuit like that considers injury until it happens.
Exactly.
So then how do you handle it if you're not ready?
Exactly. I saw other players, I mean, in high school, football injuries, basketball injuries, but nothing like I had.
Yeah.
Nothing like to the severity of I'm out. Mm-hmm. And people saw that I was out. Yeah. I had partners, man, that helped me rehab, and I went into that mode. I went into rehab mode, but I also went into an escape mode.
Yeah.
Of reality, of this is the end, man. And I got to the point then where I was smoking a lot of marijuana and drinking a lot of liquor. Wasn't doing the rehab like I should be doing. Was living with my grandmother and my aunt at the time in Fort Worth, rehabbing back and forth from the hospital. My mom and dad had moved to Washington, D.C., outside of D.C. He was working for the Department of Agriculture. So they sent him to D.C., to the main Department of Agriculture in D.C. for a promotion. So they bought a home, outside of D.C. in Maryland, beautiful home out there. And we were at one time stationed there when I was a younger kid. My father was. So my dad had a lot of friends out there still, and he wanted to go back. He knew I struggled in Texas too, so he kind of wanted me out of Texas. Now, here's the crazy thing. I told my aunt and my grandmother that to let my mom and dad know that, I'm rehabbing, I'm working at the time, 2 part-time, and I'm still in school, but I wasn't in school. My addiction, I think, began there, my substance use disorder.
And what age are you around this time?
Probably about 18.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got out of high school young at 16, 17, so I was about 18. And, hanging around guys that weren't in school, guys that I had met in Fort Worth, selling weed and messing around with girls, and I stopped going to class because that was required. And I had my aunt, lie for me. I never really talked to my grandmother because she wouldn't have lied for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I had my aunt. Yeah. I was like, you know what I mean? So I remember coming home one night, coming home from work, and I saw a rental car outside my grandmother's house. I was like, uh-oh. I just knew it was my dad.
Yeah. Check up on you.
Check up on me, right? So I remember walking to my grandmother's house, and she lived in a nice, older, Victorian style, my grandmother.
Describe it, paint a picture.
Oh, man, it was on the south side of Fort Worth, right? There is older Victorian homes where there was the old jazz scene, music scene, because my uncle, as I was telling you, was a big jazz guy, right? Yep. So they had moved over on the south side. And this is a white family now, right? I'll say this. My grandmother was white, but her husband was a light-skinned black man, right? So my grandmother was light and white. And then my grandfather was light too,
okay,
right? And he was a big railroad engineer guy, right? He worked for the railroad, good money. So the area was a prominent Victorian, upper class, interracial part of Fort Worth.
Okay.
I didn't even know nothing about. And if someone is from Fort Worth listening, they'll know it's over off, I think it was Bond Street, where Bond was popping. Music, jazz, you know what I mean? Back in those days where Red Fox, the old Red Fox comedian, were doing comedy shows there, and Tina Turner, I heard, and Ike were doing shows there. But it was beautiful homes.
Cool times.
I'm talking about cool times, right? I remember as a kid.
Yeah, I just like reminiscing. I told you before, man, my father's 79, and I just love hearing about like the 60s, 70s, even the 80s. I feel like I was born in the wrong era.
Oh, man, it was Taylor, it was beautiful, man, because check this out. I remember as a kid staying there, right? Corner store, going down there getting bubble gum.
For what, 5 cents?
Not even that, bro. Not even that. You know what I mean?
Now, taxes on gum are 5 cents.
Exactly. And I remember going up to my uncle's room, right? And he would come in. He was a big, he played the flute and he played the sax, right? But more on the flute, right? And he would come in wasted sometimes. And he would drop money all over the floor in his room. So I'd sneak up, brother. And it'd be like $5 of change on the floor.
That's a lot of gum.
That's a lot of gum, brother. And I'd creep in and he'd turn over. And he knew it was me. You know, just be quiet. You know,
right.
Shh, be quiet. So I'd hit him up. But it was, trusted. And I remember getting in trouble and being escorted by the next door neighbor 3 doors down from my grandmother. You know what I mean? You know what this boy was doing today?
Oh, man.
Oh, man, it was a beautiful neighborhood.
So you come home, father's in the driveway.
I come home, father's in the driveway. I walk in the door. He's sitting, at the table. And my grandmother's house was beautiful, man. He's sitting at the kitchen or the dining room table and going, boy, go upstairs and pack your stuff because I know everything, right? He said, you're coming to D.C. You're coming home because I know you ain't been in school. And I'm expecting a lecture, right? I'm expecting, because my father, when he was angry, right? And I'll say this, he's still living, I love him dearly, but he'll never admit to it, but he was a functional alcoholic, man. You know what I mean? He got up and worked every day, but at night, he drank, and I saw it. And, he had been drinking that night, and there was a lot of times he got in my face, and a lot of times he put hands on me. And I thought he was going to do the same, but at this time, I'm pretty tall and I'm pretty grown, and he's only 5'7", and at this time I'm the height I am now, 6'3", right? I thought I was going to grow some more, but it didn't happen. But he came over, and I was expecting it, right? Yeah. And I was wrong, and all he said was, "Go up there and pack your stuff. We're going home. We'll find out tomorrow. I know everything," and that was it.
Wow.
I came downstairs. He said, "You packed?" I was like, "Packed." And my grandmother came in, and she's just shaking her head. She said, "You hungry, boy? Come on back here. I fixed you some food." Yep. And the way I went, we flew up to D.C., got home, Taylor, and after the injury, still kind of rehabbing, not still kind of, I was still rehabbing, but I was confused. My dad knew I was drinking. My dad knew I was smoking weed. And he said, that's not going to happen in my house. My dad's an inspector general. He's the law. He carried a gun and a badge, right? That's not going to happen in my house. So got home, and this is probably about 79, early 79, or actually late 78. Just can't remember, but got home, rehabbed the knee.
Was there any punishment during that time, or
there was really no punishment?
Do you think they understood that you were probably just struggling?
Yeah, I think my dad finally came to terms, man, about how hurt I was about the injury. My mother knew, but my father knew how much I wanted that, right? And he understood it. I think it's one of the very first times. I remember him one night. We stayed up to 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll never forget this. And he was a big cognac drinker, right? He was able, boy, coming in the kitchen, had some Cavassier cognac sitting on the table. He poured me a drink. He was like, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about life, son. He told me a little bit about his story I didn't know, and then he asked me, what you going to do next? You're going to rehab your knee? You're going to go back to school? You can go back to SMU, but you're not going to be doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I prefer you staying up here. Are you going to rehab your knee and maybe try out one of the colleges here? You're that good. I think you could make it, maybe Division I, Division II. Or thirdly, you could join the military, like I did.
Yeah.
And my dad joined as an enlisted. He got his degree, got accepted to Officer Candidate School, and became commissioned.
So at this point in time, were you kind of considering all options? Or
all options.
As soon as he said military, was it boom?
Being from a military family, and I was always fascinated in ships for some reason. I was a big model guy when I was younger. When we were overseas, to keep me occupied, I would build models, and all my models were ships, right? Destroyers, carriers. I was just fascinated, right? So or get a job.
Yeah.
But.
So you decided military.
Decided military.
How did that process go?
Well, I didn't decide it right away. You know, it was, I got a job for a little while, and then I start meeting some guys who were in the military because I was going to the gym with my dad on base, Joint Air Force Base Andrews in Maryland, Andrews Air Force Base, but they call it Joint Andrews now. Yep. But I was going to the gym, and I was talking to airmen, you know, talking to sailors. I kind of like the black, you know, that the Navy wore, you know, and I play hoop with them. You know what I mean? You know, because at this point in time, I mean, I could start playing a little bit. You know, I started thinking about college, but I was like, money? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe I could finish my school, GI Bill, boom, boom, boom. So last minute, bro, boom, I call recruiter.
You mentioned the uniform, and you know, I'm a veteran. I talk to a lot of veterans. It's always the uniform that gets people. Like, I joined the Marines because they're Class A's. It's nice. So I joined the Air Force. Like that's always like the first thing. You know?
Exactly. And believe it or not, I had a Marine uniform.
Yeah.
And I was sharp in it. That was my Halloween uniform.
When I was sharp.
It's sharp, brother. You know what I mean? But I remember people telling me.
They call it stolen valor today.
Exactly, brother. Exactly. But I remember cats telling me, don't join the Marines unless you want to go to war.
True.
You know what I mean? But if it's for some, simplify to my brothers. You know what I mean? I'm Navy. I carried you guys for years.
So let's go into your first days in the Navy.
First days in the Navy, man. I remember boot camp, Orlando, Florida. They closed that boot camp because when I joined, it was last minute, Taylor. I mean, I went down to recruiting. 2 days later, I was on the bus, swearing my hands, and it was that quick of a decision, right? I remember coming home with Mom going, Mom, I've joined the military. She's like, what?
Well, they'll kick you into shape.
Exactly. What? Oh, I'm so proud of you. Next thing I didn't want to bust. You're already gone, baby? It's like, yeah, I'm gone, Mom. But boot camp, great. A school, I was an admin guy, personnelman. Meridian, Mississippi is where I went to school at. What I didn't understand, though, because at that time, you could put East Coast or West Coast sailor, but you're going to sea, right? Which I wanted to do anyway, right? But I wanted to go on a carrier. And they sent me to San Diego, amphibious base, Chula Vista, 32nd Street, amphibious Navy, LST 1191 USS Racine.
Wow.
Boom! First ship. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, this flat bottom, you know what I mean?
Small boat.
Yeah. And I remember getting off the cab. I remember flying in San Diego, getting in the cab, and the cab driver was just laughing. Like, bro, what you laughing for? He was like, you have no clue.
He's driven around so many of you guys.
Exactly. You know what I mean? He was like, yeah, you're going to the Navy, all right.
Yeah.
And I remember passing the destroyers, right? You could see them right off of 32nd Street, everybody, and going further down, I forgot what they wrote on Chula Vista, and going to the 32nd Street base, hitting the amphib base, and then seeing nothing but the LSTs and the LSDs and the LHAs. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm going on an LHA, which looks like a mini aircraft carrier, right? But kept passing those and kept on. I mean, the LSTs were like on the last pier, bro. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, no, no. And best thing ever happened to me.
Really?
Man, our crew was solid, brother.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, go ahead. What you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, I was in the Army, and then the Army, it's like, what duty station do you get? What state is that in? What unit at that duty station do you get? And I guess for the Navy, it's like, what kind of ship do I get?
Right.
You know, because I want to maybe go to, you know, Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Right.
But for you, it was like, I want to go on a destroyer or an aircraft.
Exactly.
Carrier. That's a cool. It's a different
exactly.
mindset.
It's a different concept, right?
I like it.
I think maybe now you get to choose if you're like an 8th year sailor or a 10th year sailor, you can pick. But coming out of A school, you know, you go where they send you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where the Navy needs you, right? Mm-hmm. But like I said, it was the best thing happened to me. And the reason why I say it's the best thing that happened to me is our crew. Our crew. And this was...
They accepted you, I bet.
Oh, man. Man, I remember getting out the cab, and it was, let me describe it for you. It was San Diego, probably 60s, fog on the pier. You could barely see the ship, right? You see 1191, see the lights flashing. And I remember going, Lord have mercy, what is this thing? So I remember getting out the cab, walking up the pier, getting ready to walk up, the quarterdeck. And it was his brother named Coco, Hollywood, Florida.
Shout out
to Coco, if you're listening, brother. But I remember just jumping on the quarterdeck, right? He was like, wait a minute. Bro, what are you doing? You're not going to salute. I remember his exact words. You better turn around and salute, bro, because, you got to salute.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Right.
So, first mistake, right? And then he saw my orders in my left hand and then my duffel bag in my right. You know what I mean? He was like, welcome home.
New guy.
You know what I mean?
What was your job?
I was a personnelman, basically admin. Yeoman, they call it now. Dealing with military personnel records, dealing with ship's office.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify that because we're going to get into your story here.
Yeah, ship's office, interacting with the crew.
And did you kind of sign up for that because you didn't want to see combat, or you didn't want to?
Well, in the Navy, just like after the ASVAB, you get qualified for different things. My old man was admin. I mean, I signed up to be, they call it data processing, but that school was full. So I chose the easiest, right? And then I had the mindset that I was going to change my, in the Army, they call it what when you change your profession.
Just reclass.
Yeah, reclass. Yeah. Perfect. Reclass. I was going to reclass after about 6 or 7 months because, data processing, computer processing school would open up, right? Because that was the thing back in those days. This is when computers were popping up. You know what I mean? I knew it was going to be. So personnelman is what I choose. It was a quick A school. It was an easy A school. Actually, I got another stripe for it. It was an E3.
Oh, wow.
Going to the school. You know, they gave me an incentive. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. More money. So, immediately fall into the ship, go through the process, the learning, the general quarters. I was pretty big, right? 6'1", 6'2", behind I am now. I had been working out. So they were looking for different qualifications. I was an expert shooter. I got that in boot camp. So they were looking for different classifications that you could see. Once you're on a ship, you do what you do and what you're trained for, whether it be personnelman, gunman, solar tech, whatever. But everybody has another duty of volunteership, whether it be helo firefighting, general quarters, pinpoint man,
maintenance,
supply, doing
additional duty,
additional duties, right? So I remember meeting the captain after about being 6 or 7 months, because I would work out all the time. And I remember having conversation with me about going to Navy SEAL school. But he said, before you go to Navy SEAL school, I want to send you to pilot rescue school. So what pilot rescue school is, doing helo operations, let's say a helo hovers, and that's how we get our food, our mail in the Navy when we're out to sea. Some helos land on the ships, but we carry what is called causeways. We carried Marines. The ship's crew was about 240, and we could carry about 300 Marines. We were a landing ship tank. And the landing ship tank is one that, if you guys remember the old John Wayne, Iwo Jima old movies, or seeing ships land up in the beach, the front of it opens and Marines run out.
Right.
Or amphibious Marine carriers, just like doing D-Day. We carried those things, okay? So that's what our job was. We could carry more Marines than there were Navy. So immediately, pilot rescue, immediately Since I was qualified in shooting, I was pretty big. I could fight, just in case anything went off and went down after we dropped the Marines. I was the watchman near the captain. I was his 1MC, they call it. In other words, giving commands to the engine room and which way we should go. So, I mean, I moved in rank pretty fast. Mm-hmm. I got sailor of the quarter. I was a 4-0 sailor, man. I was on my way, and I was going to get recommended for officer candidate school. And at that time, they had what is called limited duty officer, LDO, where you could become commissioned with an associate's degree, which I had. And, the highest rank you could achieve as commissioned is probably lieutenant commander, lieutenant colonel, vice versa in the Army. So I was going to recommend that or go back to school and get accepted for OCS. My CO, my commanding officer, Captain Cornelius O'Keefe was his name, was highly going to recommend me, right? And this is the time where, that's why I enjoyed it. Ship's crew, we had a basketball team. We were going to the Philippines. We had deployed 6 months to Subic Bay, Africa, Australia.
Really?
And we had a heck of a crew. And this was probably about 81, 82. And then 83 happened where we got deployed. Because every year you were doing a deployment, right? Every year you had to do, your med cruise for 6 months. And it was actually the last deployment of the Racine before it was going to be put in reserve to Long Beach, because they were thinking about doing away with landing ship tanks, LST, because all of them have been decommissioned now.
So where did you guys deploy?
We deployed as a West Coast ship to the Pacific, Hawaii, next stop Philippines. And then at the time, the Lebanese conflict was going on.
Yeah.
The Middle East conflict was going on. Iran, Iraq was going on, if I'm not mistaken, but more of the Lebanese Beirut conflict was going on, the Gulf of Oman, Malak. And there was going to be a huge warfare gathering, practice, if you will, on the coast of Lebanon. Matter of fact, the president or defense secretary had called not just the United States Navy, but the French Navy, the Great Britain Navy, into that Gulf, to secure the pathways of that water, of the straits of Oman, right? Because a lot of oil is flowing through there. But Lebanon and Beirut was happening. You could see the firing on the beach, right? You could see the conflict going on. And we got there probably late September, and just stayed on the coast, make circles in the water, if you will. That's what we do. And I remember us going to general quarters a few times, and remember us taking fire a couple times, maybe terrorists. My job was I carried a .45, right? I was the ones, on the side because I could shoot. General quarters, that was my general quarters, right? I was also positioned as a pilot rescuer, as I mentioned. If something were to happen where, one of our jets or one of our helicopters were hovering over, because we had an LHA doing reconnaissance on the beach, right, along with other militaries, French Navy, Great Britain Navy. I mean, there was a number of navies out there. I can't recall anyway. But it was a practice is what it was. I mean, it was a war going on, not our war, but Lebanon, Beirut was going on. So I remember getting calls of general quarters, finding out things going on, and I was always in a position of, just in case something happens, I'm hitting the beach or I'm hitting the water.
It's like a presence patrol type
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
So, and I was 4-0 Navy, bro. I was about it. You know what I mean? Saving our country, saving lives. But I mean, I was really into being in the United States Navy.
Right.
You know, I was thinking about making it a career. Mm-hmm. My father's 25-year-old career Navy. And I remember that day in October, and I can't give you the specific date.
October 23rd, 1983.
Yes, sir.
So it was the Marine barracks at the Beirut airport.
Right.
There's a massive bomb that was detonated by a terrorist organization, killed 200 Marines, I believe 18 sailors, 3 soldiers, something along those lines. Yes. Massive attack, massive casualties. Where were you that day?
I was in my bunk sleeping the night before. And I remember not feeling right for some reason.
This is before you knew.
It's before I knew.
Yeah.
And I kept on tossing and turning. I was on the bottom bunk right now. I got up and I just walked around, and I walked through the ship a little bit. Got outside, went out and smoked a cigarette, tried to get back in the bunk, and then finally went to sleep, and then woke up on general quarters. General quarters. Everybody manned their battle station. I was like, what? Was this another practice or what? And then as soon as I got up, got my gear on, got my helmet on, got my gun on, went outside, I saw smoke. I was like, whoa, what is going on? And then I remember Senior Chief Long, I never forget his name. He passed away about 5 years ago, and he grabs me. He goes, are you ready? And he was running. And I remember him handing me a flap jacket and a green coat, and just he ran right by me. He's like, you ready? I'm like, ready for what? And the paper said I volunteered. I didn't really volunteer, but I was one that was called. Voluntold. Next thing I know, I'm on the Liberty boat. I'm headed for the beach.
Do you know what happened yet, or?
Yeah.
Now you do?
Yeah. I know that there was a truck bomb, 2 truck bombs, not 1, 2.
Yeah, I think they estimated over 2,000 pounds of explosives.
Exactly. 2. One to kill the Marines, and another one shortly after that killed French. Mm-hmm. Briefly told on the way, not what to expect, but just to be ready. You've been trained, Taylor. You don't think, you act for the safety of others, for the safety of life, to get ready, to breathe, protect yourself, protect others, until you see it. Until you see bodies, your brothers. Cats that you knew. Brothers you played ball with. That you high-fived with. That you borrowed a cigarette from. That you sat on the end of the ship and looked at the stars and talked about life. And what you want. Who you want to marry. How many kids you want. How your girl left you. Did you get a letter today? Life. Dreams. Hopes. And you know who they are. From the rings, from the tattoos. Your brothers.
So you're on this recovery team, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I did my job. Did as many as I can, worked as long as I could. until they brought in a massive force where they did the rest. When I say did the rest, I'm talking about they brought in the Marine battalion. We flew in C-141s with supplies and medical supplies for those who were still injured, and only do it until I told I was to stop and I could go home. And I just did my job, man. Got back on the Liberty boat and went back to the ship. And stayed until we were told to go, which was like about 2 months later. Nothing happened. There was no more war. There was no more drunk bombings, but we were in general quarters most of the time until we were placed by another fleet. It was just their time to make their station there. It was time for us to go home.
What did it feel like being in that spot, in that scene, in that moment? In the aftermath, if you will.
It didn't affect me, Taylor, right after. And why I say it didn't, because I was pretty close to a lot of brothers on the ship, right? And I took it out in anger. And I'll be honest with you, I was smoking a lot of weed on the ship, bro. You know, we had hit Philippines. We could buy weed in the Philippines and Hong Kong. And, you know, and at that time, doing general quarters, you know, urinalysis were a thing at the time, but they didn't care, right? Definitely didn't care about me. Not with my job and my volunteership, but, you know, I smoke a lot of weed, man. I would numb myself. You know, still on active duty, still on the ship. I knew it was the wrong thing to do. And then I would have talks, and I would fight, literally fight. And when I say fight, but with boxing gloves, you know, I would hang out with the boatswain's mates for some reason. There was the big knuckleheads. I'd be in the boatswain's red ward, right? Not the admin ward. We had like a little skinny ass.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm down with the boatswain's mate. You know, the guy's hands dirty and everything, mopping decks all day. Ward is just terrible, and they're down there playing dominoes and spades and cussing. I'm like, this is me, bro. And those are the guys I hung out with, man.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, we put on boxing gloves, man. We box around, but I would talk to senior enlisted, man. I mean, I talked to a chief, been in the Navy, been in combat, you know.
You talk to others who'd maybe experienced something similar. I mean, I'm sure
nothing
at
like
that time
that,
similar,
but they couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
You know, it was like 4 of us who went, but I was the youngest enlisted.
Yeah.
There are 2 guys that went were first class petty officer E6s, 1 senior chief and 1 E7. I was at the time in E4, right? But I could shoot. I was pilot rescue. You know what I mean? Probably going to Navy SEAL school. You know, that was my next stop, bro.
Right.
It really was.
I just wanted to ask you about it because there's a lot of, you know, veterans out there, military members in general, who we train to do a very dirty job. Right. You know, whether you're a gunman, a medic, anything where you're literally training to get your hands dirty,
right,
and you know it, and you're never ready when it happens the first time.
Exactly.
Exactly. As a medic, I can remember the first time I treated a real person, and like you're saying, you just react because you've trained so much for that moment that you numb yourself. It's there's something that happens in your body where you go numb and you're just in performance mode.
Exactly, brother.
And you're looking at all this gore and blood and guts, frankly, and you're just like in work mode.
Work mode, bro.
And it's not until you come home, you go lay down at night, you go talk to someone who has no clue what you've been through, that it just starts coming over you.
Exactly.
And that's, what PTSD is, and it scars you. It's like it's burned into your eyes.
Exactly.
So I feel for you. I can't imagine what that was like specifically, but I just wanted to hear your experience, because I think, as we share our experiences, other people hear us and they understand they're not alone. They understand these symptoms are normal for what the situation is, but we can get through it.
Right, exactly.
USAA is celebrating over 100 years of service to our military community. In 1922, it was a group of soldiers that started USAA to insure each other's vehicles when no one else would. Since then, USAA has grown to over 13 million members strong, and through it all, one thing has remained. USAA is still serving the military community and their families. With their launch of Face the Fight Coalition to counter veteran suicide, we are proud to have USAA as a sponsor of the Veterans Voice podcast.
You described it perfectly. I mean, we're an elite military, the best in the world. We watch out for each other because we're trained to do it. And we're going to do it as veterans and active duty cats. And that's how we survive. That's how we come home.
Yeah.
And that's how we save others, right? And that's exactly the mode I went in. And then you stay in that mode because it's almost like you're in intense, you're adrenaline. Your adrenaline is running, right? And your adrenaline is running is when you get back, it's running. And then I have to go back and use that one word, reality hits, bro.
Right. And in your case, you kind of already touched on it, but I know you battled addiction pretty bad. So you decided to start escaping that reality. How did that addiction journey go for you?
The addiction journey started, of course, when I got out, Taylor. I got out because, the military, and just like my story in the Gazette read, that I got caught, on a couple of UAs. And was at this time at the Pentagon, actually working for the Bureau of Naval Personnel, because remember I was personnel, but right down the street from the Pentagon, working under now a 4-star admiral. His name is Frank Bowman, who was actually a friend, who saw me suffering, who knew my story, who would try to help. But I just kept on digging myself a hole through substance use. And you got to understand now, this is from, the scene, staying on the ship, re-enlisting for another 4 years, being stationed ashore duty to D.C., the Bureau of Naval Personnel. And those years, I'm fighting PTSD. I'm fighting those dreams. I'm fighting and never asking for help.
Do you think it was anger that fueled this? Anger about the incident?
Without a doubt.
Anger that you lost those guys? Anger that these terrorists did that to your friends?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Wasn't our war.
Because you just want to do something about it.
Exactly.
You wish you could have prevented it. You wish you could get revenge. You wish all these things.
And then I start visualizing, well, why wasn't our security much stronger? I mean, a truck bomb? Wasn't Marines stationed out there to see this truck coming, to shoot it up, to drive? I mean, what did we learn from this? Why did we fail? Why did we fail, my friends? Why did we fail each other, right? I didn't train to fail. So I was upset. I was angry. I was angry not only at them, I was angry at the military. And I took it out on everybody. And the only way I knew was substance use disorder, man. Mm-hmm. And at the time, man, it was marijuana, it was alcohol, marijuana and alcohol, and then it escalated to cocaine when I got to D.C., when I re-enlisted in shore duty. And that's actually when I got caught. Mm-hmm. I mean, I left the ship as an E5, getting ready to be frocked to E6 for my duty. I mean, I made rent quick because I was a 4-old sailor. I was command advanced to E5 by the CO, of our ship. Commander, actually now Admiral E.R. Bailey, looked at my record. I had taken the test for E5 and I missed it by that much. That much, right? In the Navy, you have to take these tests, right? And
right.
He was like, no, I'm commander. I remember him calling me to his office. Going, guess what? I was like, yes, sir. He's like, you're now an E5. I was like, well, I failed the exam. But it escalated when I got to D.C., right? And when I got there, I hit it. I hit the PTSD. But as little by slowly, working for Admiral Frank Bowman, he saw something wasn't right. At lunchtime, I'd come home, or at lunchtime, man, I mean, that's what sailors do, right? We drink. I mean, for real. I mean, and during lunch, even on shore duty, I'm drinking with commissioned officers, right? As an enlistee, calling me Keith, not Petty Officer Hairston, going, hey, Keith, come on over, have a beer. Kid you not.
Yeah, I believe you.
So, I mean, I was coming home drunk more than they were, but I was doing cocaine too. And then I got caught. I got caught on a UA, and then a second UA. And then they took a strike. And I never admitted but one time. And then they sent me to rehab. 30-day rehab, got out, stayed clean for about a year, then relapsed again. And then I remember Captain or Admiral Bowman, he was a captain at the time. He was like, Keith, you need to get out, son. And he would call me Keith, not Petty Officer Harrison. I love this man to this day. I still stay in touch with him. 4-star Admiral, Pacific Fleet Commander, or actually Atlantic Fleet Admiral, nuclear power. And to this today, he's a friend. He knows I'm clean. One of my dear friends. And I think maybe he had family that had suffered. Maybe his father. He never did tell me, but he did say he had family. And he had seen it. He had witnessed it. But he said, son, you need to get out before you get kicked out.
Yeah.
So I did. And went back to school, went to University of Maryland, got my degree. But in the interim, Washington, D.C. was just overwhelmed with the crack epidemic. Mm. And this is back in the late 80s. And
how old are you around here?
28, 29.
Family yet or no?
What?
Family? Like
yes.
Kids?
No family.
Yet? Okay.
No family yet. I'm in and out of recovery. And then 29, my mother and father got aware of the problem. Just the drug problem, they thought. My mom and dad knew about the episode in Lebanon. They didn't know about the PTSD, though. They saw their son was dying from a drug addiction, right? Sent him to rehab. And at the time, I was working for the post office, I think it was. I was a mail carrier. Mm. And
not a bad job.
Not a bad job. And working in Alexandria, Virginia, believe me, delivering mail to congressmen and senators. That was my route. Because that's where most of them lived outside of D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia. But my addiction was skyrocketed. PTSD had skyrocketed. And I was living with it, but medicating it every day. But working, really, How I was working, I don't know. And walking and delivering mail until I wasn't.
Yeah.
Until one day, I didn't even deliver mail. I was so wasted.
Wow.
I left it in the truck, in the mail truck. Mom and Dad found out about it, sent me to rehab, 30-day rehab up in Blue Ridge Mountains, man, beautiful rehabilitation. They're front row, Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, man, it was beautiful.
That's a beautiful area.
Oh, beautiful area, Taylor. Loved the rehab, met some fellas, man. I'll never forget this guy named Chris. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm ready. I've hit bottom, right? So I thought. And got out of rehab, had a drink right after I got out. That's a relapse.
The next day?
Like 2 days after. Wow. Celebrating my celebrating get out of rehab.
Ironic,
right? But I was going to AA meetings and NA meetings after that. And relapsed after a drink for a couple of days and then got right back into support groups. Mm-hmm. Alcoholics Anonymous. And stay clean from there. 13 years, man. 13 years, met a girl in recovery, married her. Had a son. Now, you had asked me something in a previous relationship. I wasn't married, but I had a daughter back in the early 80s from a girl that I thought I was going to marry.
Okay.
But she found out about my addiction. She was a school teacher, very sweet lady. But she found out about addiction and said I was going to have this child and you're going to be the father and you're going to take care of it, which I did. Mm-hmm. She decided to move to Cincinnati from D.C. because she got a job as a high school teacher, and they moved to Cincinnati. And I stayed in touch with my daughter. Mm-hmm. I didn't see her as often as I wanted to because mm-hmm. I was off into my addiction. But mm-hmm. I'd go to Cincinnati and talk to her on the phone, send her money. Not the dad I should have been, mm-hmm. for sure, but she knew who her dad was.
Right.
But met a girl, during that time I stayed clean, got married, had a son. My life escalated. And I had escalated to the point, because you had mentioned, Taylor, business, that you wanted to follow your dad in insurance and business. That's exactly what I got into. Stockbroker, mm-hmm. insurance broker, working for top 5 insurance broking company in Georgetown, D.C., in Manhattan, New York, flying, wearing Marnie suits. I was making 6 figures, brother. I was, I guess, Series 6, Series 7 license, if you know what those are. Yeah. And yeah, I was living the high life. I mean, quickly, right? So, recovery, beautiful wife, son, busy.
13 years sober.
13 years sober. I lived on the foundation of faith. My life is great. And I thought the PTSD was over. I would have bouts, but I would use faith, right?
At what point did you find your relationship with God, would you say?
Found it quick. I found it, from a family, a mother raised Catholic.
So early on in life?
Early on.
Okay. Always been a
but
part of
I found the relationship with God in that 13 years.
Okay.
Through faith. And he blessed me, right? And I talk about this in my story that, I was no longer living in fear. I was living in faith, right? I was living in belief and surrender, and I know I can't just even drink one beer and take one hit of nothing. And my life had escalated, right? Making money, wearing suits, man, it changed quickly, bro. My wife had won a lawsuit at the time. She was working for the Metro Transit Authority. She was an estimator for them. She was making good money. And she had sued them or sued someone, and I think we had won $500,000.
Oh, wow.
Dude, so that money in, I'm making 6 figures. Oh, man, life was great. Fantastic. So sponsoring people, helping people, staying in the rooms and support groups. And like I told you, I was a 12-stepper, man. And to this day, I still got friends from way back. But I would say out of the 13 years, around the 8th, 9th year is when the visions, when the sweats, when the dreams. I remember having a dream, and I wasn't even home. I was on the road, I think in Pittsburgh, I was a broker at the time, insurance broker, selling insurance to large corporations, health insurance, large health, you know what I mean, go out and give presentations. I remember going back up to the hotel, and I was worn out. And going upstairs, got to bed about 11, and I remember waking up about 3, sweating and sitting at the end of the bed going, where am I? Dude, I remember picking up the phone. There were no cell phones, but calling my wife. I'm like, honey, where am I at? She, huh? You better be in Pittsburgh. But going, what happened? So I prayed. But it scared me. And then a week after that, it was like, and there was nothing I was doing, I thought, wrong. But it was like evil was taking over. And when I say evil, I'm talking about, drugs and alcohol are just a symptom. And the symptom, one of the symptoms, is you're fighting good from evil. And when you take drugs on a continuing basis, you lose your spirituality. There's 2 higher powers. There's one that's evil and then one that's not. And the one that's evil took over. Because I was living in ego. I was living in I'm better than you. I was living in I'm not using my support groups often as I was. Because I was saying I was too busy. I was being selfish. I thought, I'm making all this money. I don't need this anymore. And see, it's an accumulation of you stop doing things, and then evil sneaks in. The disease sneaks back in. The disease of addiction sneaks back in. The evilness, that other higher power.
Do you think money became the new drug?
Without a doubt. Obsession.
Yeah, just a new obsession, because that's almost what addiction is, right? Like when you don't have purpose, it might be as simple as drugs or alcohol.
Exactly.
But when you have this huge purpose and you're making a ton of money, that could become the obsession.
Absolutely.
And then you get addicted to it.
Absolutely. And that's what I was addicted to. Buying Armani suits that cost $3,000 because I could afford it. Flying in New York, going to Atlantic City, New Jersey, gambling, $2,500. I was drinking and using without drinking and using. Right?
Yeah.
They say you can use without even picking up.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. I was using.
It's like you're using other stuff to fill that same void. Yeah, I understand.
And that's when, like I mentioned to you, the other starts sneaking back in. And it's just like I told you before we started, Taylor. It's just that, when you're not off into using something, reality sets in. And reality sets in where I always say God is trying to enter to show you the truth. And you're not seeing it, you're not accepting it. And since you're not accepting it, then evil will take over.
Sneaks in.
The bedevilments, they call it. That word bedevil, look it up. You become selfish. And that's exactly what was going on. And I'd fight it off. I'd shake it off, right? I'd shake it off. But here's the thing about recovery. You become aware of how this disease works, just as how you become aware of how to recover. You become aware how it attacks you so you can fend it off by using my brothers, picking up the phone, by getting the meetings, and I wasn't doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I was fighting it off with self-will.
Yeah.
Not God's will, self-will. So, and it was eating me up. So I remember telling my wife, and my wife saw it. Right? My wife's in recovery. She's going to meetings. I'm not. I'd go to a meeting and lie.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. Look what I'm driving. Look what I'm wearing.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I wouldn't even have to say anything. Bro, you dog.
Yeah.
Dog, you look good, bro. Look at them Jordans.
I'm glad you said that. Like lying. When we start lying to cover things up, it's almost like we start believing our own lies because we're shameful of what we're actually doing, what we actually have going on, and we have this Armani suit to cover it up.
Exactly.
And so we just live the lie.
Exactly. Be careful.
How long did that take to catch up with you, though?
Until I actually picked up. No, I take that back. It caught up with me when I decided to move to Colorado. I knew I was going to pick up. My wife knew I was going to pick up. My sponsor knew I was going to pick up. I'm talking about cats who have been in recovery a long time who could see through my bullshit. Right?
Right.
Those guys told me I was getting ready to pick up. I'm like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But I knew. So I did the geographical move, right? I'm talking about geographical move so quick that we packed up a house within 30 days and moved to Colorado, lived in a hotel up on Garden of Gods days in before we had even bought a house here. We had the money, right? And we ended up infinitely, but a geographical change so quick that if I used in DC, my wife knew I was going to die. So she was like, not only that, she had a brother out here too. She thought her brother, had some addiction problems and whatnot. She wanted to be close and whatnot. We had the money. She had won that lawsuit, had some money in the bank. Didn't take me long. And the Gazette put it in the paper. I dropped the broker stuff. I thought maybe if I get out becoming a broker, making all that money, living that lifestyle, that ego. So I took a job at the Gazette as an account executive, selling advertising. And making pretty good money. We had a house, finally had a house up in up in Rock Rimmon. Beautiful home, man. Working at the Gazette, going in every day, and I was selling advertising, brother. I mean, I came in, smoking. I came in, I'm a relationship builder, man. I love people, right? And so the big old ad, I would never forget this, an engineering company that wanted to come into Colorado Springs, building a new center, engineers, system engineers, this is Space Command and whatnot. So this is when all of it was happening. They wanted to put this big old ad in the paper, color ad, in Denver Post and the Colorado Springs Gazette. I was like, you don't need the Post. You want it in the Springs, we'll just make it big enough so Denver can see it. And I had them put it in two sides of the paper. It was a great deal, one of the biggest deals. So I go up to Denver because they fly into Denver. They just fly into Denver just to sign the deal, right? They're coming in from, I think it was an engineering firm out of Sacramento or something. They just flew in like a couple of days just to sign the deal and meet me because we had hit it off. So they were staying at the Embassy Suites down off of 16th Street Mall. I drove up there, met them, paperwork out, signed the deal. We ate dinner, and they wanted to toast, right? I was like, I don't drink. And one of them knew I didn't drink because I had met him before. But the three other guys didn't, and I was like, no, good. Fellas, I'm good. I don't need to drink. And I remember getting up, going outside, smoking a cigar, going in the bathroom, coming back, and they had ordered a Heineken. It's like, damn it, I told him he didn't drink. And I'm looking at Steve going, so I slide the beer over to him. He's like.
And this is right at the 13-year mark.
Right
is
at
what
the
you're
13-year
saying.
mark. Right after I had celebrated 13 years, matter of fact. My anniversary date was November 4th, 1990.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the next week after November 4th that I was closing this deal. And this is 2003, November. And slid the beer over to him. He's like, slide it over to me. You know where I got up, come back. So they pick up their beers. I pick up my water. Yeah. Put it down, boom, shake hands. They bounce. Now it's just me and that beer. And I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Denzel Washington called Flight, where he's a pilot and he's an alcoholic, where he saves lives and, you know, he flies the plane upside down, but at the end he ends up in prison. His son comes, sees him. But there's this episode where he knows the beer is in the refrigerator because he looks at it and he opens the refrigerator, right? And he walks around. So what I did was I got up out of the restaurant, sitting at that table, walked around 16th Street Mall for about 20 minutes, came back. They were cleaning the table, finally, but it was that beer, still there, with the cap on it, full. She didn't take it off the table because I guess she thought somebody was coming back. Yeah, me. And I remember swooping that beer up just like Denzel Washington did out of that refrigerator and drinking it in one gulp.
Wow. What did you feel in that moment when you drank
Shame.
it? So you knew right away.
I knew right away.
Yeah.
And shame. Got in the car, went back home, didn't tell my wife that I had relapsed finally. I'm sleeping so far from her, so that's all I had was the beer. But check this out. Had stopped in Castle Rock, got some mouthwash so she wouldn't smell one beer, right? Chewing gum.
Not for 5 cents anymore.
Exactly. But 2 weeks later, man, my life descended from 2004 or 2003 to 2010. And I won't bore the audience, but from that time period, after that relapse, there's several things that took in place. With the enormous being of losing my child. I was in and out. I was getting DUIs. I got a DUI in 2003. Got a DUI in 2004. Second DUI, they sent me to a rehab, Salvation Army rehab that used to be here off of Cimarron, downtown, 6-month faith-based rehab. And probation officer demanded that I go to this rehab, which I did, which I graduated. But about the third, fourth, fifth month of that, I can't remember, I think it was the fourth month out of the 6-month rehab, I got a call from Tammy, the mother of my child, or my daughter, who I'd stayed in touch with. And Captain told me I had, Keith, over the WNMC, over the announcement, because we worked in the warehouse, he told me to come into the office and said, I got some news for you. I need you to call Tammy, not your wife. Tammy, who? I'm like, oh, yeah, mother of my child. So I call her, and she tells me what went down. Telling me Susan is in a coma. She was going to the University of Cincinnati. And I was like, in a coma for what? Was she in a car accident? She was like, no. She said she had drank. They had found cocaine. They had found marijuana. They had found volume in her system, and her thin body, she wasn't that big, short, couldn't take it, her brain couldn't take it, and she went into a coma. She said, honey, doctor's saying she's getting out of it, she's going to be okay, blood pressure is fine, she's just he thinks he should just sleep, right?
And what are you doing at the time of this?
I'm in rehab.
Rehab, right?
I'm in rehabilitation, right? And first thing I hear is coma. I'm going to leave the rehab, which was probation directed. So after I get finished talking to her, last thing she tells me, you're supposed to be in rehab. Your probation, she already knew, Tammy knew that was court ordered. She knew I was already there. She said, you do not come up here. You finish that rehab. I'll keep in touch with you. I'll call you every hour, which she did. You know, to the point where she couldn't call me because we couldn't take calls at a certain time in that rehab. But she called me the next day, said she was still in a coma. She called me. She didn't call me the third day, but the fourth day, I got a call again from the captain. And check this out. Before I got that call, and this is how spirituality works, or I guess God works or something, but there was this one guy in the rehab who was strange. Brother, black guy, right, Taylor? And our jobs were to hang clothes, right? You know, and collect clothes from donations. That's how we paid for the rehab. But I'm hanging clothes with this guy. And before that call, he looks down on me. He's standing up on a post and hanging clothes higher. He looks down on me and goes, Keith, something ain't right. And I look up at him. I was like, bro, what are you talking about? He said, I don't know what it is, but something is not right. What do you mean something's not right, dog? 5 minutes later, the call comes in. Keith, report to the office. Call Tammy, and she's crying. He said, we just lost her. I was lost what? She's dead. What are you talking about? I'll never forget that day. You don't heal from something like there is nothing in life that prepares you for a call like that, Taylor. There is nothing. You can recover. You can be in the most spiritual mode of your life, but nothing on this earth prepares you for a call like that. Nothing. So I immediately go into a close-up mode. I go straight to my bunk and I start packing clothes to leave. But after that call, I blacked out. I cannot tell you what I did after. Really can't. I know that I buried my daughter. I came back to the rehab and I graduated. I worked for the rehab for about 2 months because they offered me a job. And after that, I can't tell you what happened. All I can tell you is bits and pieces. One, I tried to kill myself and failed. I went up to a mountain hotel, had a gun at the end of the bed, playing with the gun. It went off. I shot myself in the leg. I was high. I missed. I meant to shoot myself in the head. And there was no ideation. I was going to kill myself. I remember being in certain areas, one on 8th Street here, so high out of my mind. I remember deja vus. I remember bits and pieces of where I was at, where I wanted to die and lose my life. I remember fighting not only my daughter's death, but the death of my friends. I remember saying, there is no God. I remember giving up. I remember saying, screw this. I remember praying to whatever there was to take my life. You took my daughters, now take mine. And whatever that power was would not do it. I couldn't do it. I remember staying on the railroad tracks near Salvation Army Hope Rescue Center down here and waiting for the train and the train never arriving. I remember the last day, April 21st, 2010. Fountain in Shelton. Coming out of a dope house. My wife calling the police, my ex-wife, because she had enough. She had filed for separation and divorce. My son had given up on me. And I remember looking to my right at a 7-Eleven and 4 police cars being outside. I remember walking out, and one of the cops that I used to play basketball with said, "Keith, get in the car." And I remember getting in the car and wanting to die. And I remember telling the cop, "Please do me a big favor. Let these other cop cars leave and take me to an alley. Tell them that I reached for your gun and you had to shoot me. And you shot me in the head and you killed me. Would you please do that for me, officer?" And I remember him looking in the rear mirror going, "Brother, you need help. And you need to get it." I remember those words. I remember being on that bus on the way to prison, thinking about my daughter, thinking about the guys, thinking about ways I could kill myself when I got to the yard, when I got to where I was going to get to. I remember the yard. I remember getting beat up in prison. I remember the Sereno, the Mexican gang member, asking me, "How come you didn't fight back, homie?" I remember telling him I wanted to die. And I remember him walking off, not saying another word to me. And I remember that night, something greater than me took over. I remember my daughter telling me, "Daddy, live for me. Daddy, live for me." And I remember leaving prison, changing my life. I remember doing everything and anything. I remember meeting a gentleman named Weldon Long, who had come into jail, who had handed me a book called The Upside of Fear, about one man breaking the cycle of addiction, prison, and poverty, and changing your mindset from fear to faith. And I remember walking up to a building one day looking for a job on Garden of Gods and seeing his name on the door, and I hadn't seen him since jail. I said, "Oh my God, it's the guy I met in jail." I remember him hiring me and being with this man and being in his back pocket for 7 years, and me hearing his message and his story about changing your life and overcoming and getting to the exact nature of why you were doing things.
I want to get deep into your recovery, but first I just want to thank you for sharing that. That was a very emotional story. I can feel it. I'm feeling it with you right now.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage to talk about that. So I really appreciate it.
You know, a lot of these tears, brother, out of gratitude, but it's still, reflecting on emotions. And the only way you heal is letting it go. And I cry every time I talk about my brothers and my daughter. And that's how I've healed and gotten better.
Well, this entire conversation, you've talked about other people in your life who you've talked to who have helped you along the way. Mm-hmm. And that's what I feel like you're trying to do right here. You're trying to help others through sharing your story.
Absolutely. If you don't understand it, if I don't understand what Taylor went through, if you don't understand, and you do in a way, because we shared before this, if you can get in front of someone who has been through a similar story, then you will comprehend better. Because the best way to build a relationship with anybody is listening. And if you sit up and listen to a veteran who has got scars, and if he tells you his story, the truth, then he will see the solution. Because he'll tell his story differently to you next time. Or he will tell his story to himself differently so he can find the solution. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's what peer coaching is. That's what lived experience is. Is me telling my story to open up your story, but open it up to the way where you see the solution.
A new perspective.
Exactly, brother. I can't get you clean. I can't change your life. I can't force you to Mount Carmel behavioral health. I can give you every resource in the book, which I'm doing. I will love you. I will see you before I'll see your illness. I'll understand where you came from besides what you did, what you've done. Bruh, you know, I've been at jails, institutions. I will let you recognize that the next thing that you will see is death, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. And then I will walk with you. When you open that door to recovery, I won't do it for you. Nobody did it for me. Weldon Long, I always say, every time I see Wally, he was like, Wally, you saved my life, bro. He was like, no, I didn't.
You did.
You did.
He just shared a new perspective.
Exactly. You were like, bro, I ain't got that much power. Come on.
Yeah.
You did. God did.
Mm-hmm. The Veterans Voice podcast is sponsored in part by Optum and is produced in the Optum Podcast Studio. Optum and Mountain View Medical Group offer 20 clinics throughout the Pikes Peak region. Their primary and specialty care doctors provide quality, patient-centered care backed by Optum's leading health services and technology. They are dedicated to helping our community live healthier while keeping care affordable. Visit optum.com/Colorado today for more information. So starting with meeting Weldon Long, let's get into your recovery, because I would say that was both the bottom and the start to this new beginning.
It was the bottom and the start. Meeting Wally, I met Wally either in prison or in jail. Local jail down here, then on my way to prison, or Wally came into prison, right? I can't remember, believe it or not, but because remember I was in that mode of wanting to die.
I believe it.
Yeah, but I remember him handing me that book, The Upside Affair. I remember him telling his story. And even in that mode of wanting to die and tuning out, I sat down and heard this man's story, right? So after I came to believe, after my daughter came to me and told me I wanted to live, after I got out, I had that book. I found the book in the library of the prison, right? So it had to be jail. And I found the book. I actually took the book from prison. Lord, don't let Sterling be hearing this. No. But I took the book, right? And I read it on the bus to the Denver bus depot, and then the bus to Colorado Springs. And then my ex-wife picked me up. She gave me a shot. She gave me a chance, right? And it was never the same. I'd hurt her so much, but she did pick me up she saw me how I cleared my face and worked out. And from there, recovery looked like hope again, man. I immediately start getting into support groups. But first I called the VA.
How did the VA play a role in all this?
The VA played a role. There was the doctor there who was a Dr. Kidd, great doctor. And I forgot another psychologist or psychiatrist who was there. And I can't think of his name, but he was a big Stevie Wonder fan, right? I remember going to his office and he had some Stevie Wonder playing right in the back. Just like you got your thing, had it earlier.
A little jazz.
Oh, yeah, like jazz going on, brother. He was cool. And I remember him meeting him and telling him my story, man, and getting to the exact nature of PTSD. And that was the very first thing I did. I reached out to the VA. I reached out to the VA and told them I needed help. Appointment was 2-3 months out, which I get.
Right.
But in the interim, I was picking up books, looking for a job, found a job mopping floors.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm on parole now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a felon, right? And I remember praying a lot, going to support groups, waiting on my appointment. I got a job, got another job, right? First job was mopping floors, though, brother. I was like, every stroke of that mop, I was like, I'm going to get a better job than this. But I was coming to terms with wanting to live and to do it different, to focus on the exact nature.
When you say exact nature, you're talking about the exact symptom. Nature of your PTSD?
The exact nature of my PTSD, but why the symptom? Remember, drugs and alcohol are your symptom.
So what did you put your finger on? How did you figure it out?
I think it was fear, anger, resentment, self-centeredness, all those things that most people who suffer from substance abuse have, coupled with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Obsession coupled with a compulsion. I mean, the disease, but coupled with PTSD, another disease, right? Depression. They had diagnosed me with bipolar, but misdiagnosed me with that. I'm not bipolar. Diagnosed me with schizo. I'm not schizo. I just needed to get it out. Some are severe than others, right? They medicated me for a little while when I got out of prison, and I remember sleepwalking. Dude, I would wake up, and my ex-wife would tell me, you're sleepwalking, right? You're going to the refrigerator, and you're eating like one bite of an apple, and then throwing it on the ground, and then taking out a bag of chips and eating chips, and then throwing those on the... Like, no, you kidding me. She's like, come here. See that trail? That's you.
Jeez.
Dude, I'm like, no more medication, right?
Yeah.
So help with the VA, psychologist, doing what we're doing right now, brother. Rapping, talking. And then the doctor giving me his diagnosis and his solution of how to recover. Your thinking, your thoughts, books, healing, support groups.
Yeah, you said something when we had spoke on the phone a few days ago about doing a moral inventory.
Moral inventory. You were just going to read my mind. Searching and fearless moral inventory. That's what the 12-steppers call.
Tell me about how you did a moral inventory.
Moral inventory is going back to how you are telling yourself your story. Meaning, you got one, but how are you telling yourself your story? And when I say, are you missing out because you don't know? fear, resentment, self-centeredness. That's the moral inventory. Moral inventory is looking at your thinking and your behavior, your thought pattern, giving meaning to thoughts. Meaning, a thought is a thought. But people with PTSD and disease of substance abuse give them thoughts. We compound just a thought when it's just a thought, but we give it a meaning. Or we're projecting fear into something that's never even happened yet because we're living in it. Right? That's what I was doing. That everything is bad. Picking up bodies, my daughter's death, that everything is bad. I'm scared, right? I'll tell you this, and I say this all the time. I didn't have a fear of dying, Taylor. I had a fear of living. Fear got me into recovery, but fear can't keep me in recovery. Faith has to keep me in recovery. I don't have a fear of going about and drinking and drugging because I have faith I won't. See what you're telling yourself there? There's a difference. I have faith that I'll reach out to my brothers in recovery, my predecessors, Weldon. I mean, I got a list, but I got about 150 phone numbers of cats in recovery in my phone. Somebody gonna pick up. You know what I mean? I'll pick up that phone in a minute, or I get to a support group. And that's what I did early in recovery, using everything. And then the moral inventory is writing it down. When I say searching and fearless, you've got to be, all you're doing is you and a piece of paper, right? Writing your thoughts, your behavior, your resentments, your anger, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You're talking about the good sides of you, the bad side of it, and then really the ugly things. I mean, how are you treating people when you're this way, right?
That's tough to do.
It's tough to do.
It's tough to do because you're writing down both the good and the bad, but I feel like there's a lot of resistance towards doing the bad because now you have to do what? Accept it. You have to accept that you're not doing the right thing. And that's hard.
Exactly. It's very hard. And then part of the next step, if you will, is telling somebody. Telling somebody your story. Being honest for the first time.
Being vulnerable.
And telling somebody your pain, your fears. That's difficult. I'm a man who's been trained, you know what I mean? But I'm really just a little kid who stopped growing.
We all are.
Yeah, man.
I believe that.
Who stopped growing, who stopped feeling. Because I've been numbing it for 35 years. And I've been numbing for at least 30. So I stopped growing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's telling somebody that is really your guy, your dude, someone you trust, someone who understands, someone who knows and feels. And guys like us, Taylor, military guys, combat guys, I don't trust a lot of cats. You know what I mean? Very friendly, respectful with everybody. But when I'm sitting down, I mean, when I saw you downstairs, bro, when you came around the corner, I was like, brother, school.
That's him.
That's him. That's him.
Well, I appreciate it.
I was like, yeah, we good.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Thank
we
you,
good.
Man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I'm like, we good, bro. Then I come in here, how the way you got it? Yeah, we good, bro. We good. Good.
You said something important. I just want to touch on it real quick because the strength in being vulnerable, like we're saying, with someone else comes when you put it all out there, right? Like, hey, I'm vulnerable. These are my weaknesses. This is what I'm going through. These are my symptoms. These are the things I'm shameful of.
Right.
And then that person accepts you. That's where it comes from.
But guy, it's not the load that breaks us, it's how we carry the load. I'll say that again.
I like it.
It's not the load that breaks us, but how we carry that load, brother. So what you're doing is when you let it go, you're carrying the load differently. It ain't going nowhere. Because it's going to take time to heal. Trauma takes time. And this is what I'm talking about. Cats like us, Taylor, we've been traumatized, bro. We've been putting it in our back pocket. So I went through trauma therapy with the best. And it was just that doctor, Weldon Long. You know, the doctor hit it. I got vulnerable, but the solution was Weldon Long. The mindset, to change the mindset. Because see, my same thinking that got me in this mess is not going to be the same thinking that get me out of this mess.
Exactly. You got to learn something new.
You got to learn something new.
Mm-hmm. Which is also hard.
Which is also hard. But it's got to be, and it has to start with your belief system.
Yeah.
And the belief system is alcohol and drugs are no longer working. Stopped working a long time ago.
Yeah.
Long time. They just escalated. So we know that ain't working. So there's got to be something else. And for me, it's God. And, you know, it's hard for people to fathom God or spirituality, whatever you want to call it, bro. But I ain't it. And because man have failed me. And God has revealed himself to me. I'm sitting right here with 14 years of recovery, talking to you, laughing, crying, and enjoying life, Taylor. That's God. Mm-hmm. God has revealed himself from people like you asking me to do this, to share my story, through Weldon's Long message, through the guys I help message, the guys I recover with, the guys who I'm trying to help. That's how I stay. Mm-hmm. That's how I stay stopped. So my journey has been, ever since I've gotten out, is to change my life through my belief system after doing a moral inventory, finding solutions, healing with trauma. And then most importantly, the best way to get out of self-centeredness is help somebody else. Helping somebody else helps me. It's the key to recovery. It's spreading the message of hope and helping somebody else.
Yeah, like you said, seeing other perspectives. Because when you help somebody,
bro,
you're helping them see a new perspective. But then when they tell you your story back, they're now helping you inadvertently because they're showing you a new perspective.
And see, it's amazing how recovery works, because that's why I know there's a God. Two knuckleheads finding the solution together. Mm-hmm. Come on, man. Two sick people finding a solution. Groups have been doing that for years. Circles have been doing that for years. Mount Carmel does it with PTSD groups. Mm-hmm. You know that. Mm-hmm. A bunch of veterans and brothers getting together, talking about their stories, and each of us finding faith, hope, and solutions from those stories.
Good.
And hugging each other, giving people dap.
It's easier to see other people's issues, you know, in
That's
a way.
What I'm saying.
Like, take the relationship example. When you have a friend who's in a toxic relationship, you can tell them all you want, but it's not until they see it.
Exactly.
But they might need to hear it from someone else.
Exactly, brother.
It's weird, man.
Exactly.
We need each other. It's all,
exactly.
It's a place of love.
And check this out. I may tell you not to go down that path, but guess what? If you're like me, I'm hard-headed. I got to find out myself.
I'm going to try it first.
I'm going to try it first, dog. It may be different. No, it ain't going to be different. Report to me. What you think? You're right. Vulnerability is tough as a vet, because I don't think we were taught that, man. I mean, we weren't.
I think we were taught exactly the opposite. Don't be vulnerable. Suck it up. You got to keep fighting.
Exactly, brother. Not with this. Not with this we're dealing with. Not with PTSD. Not with people dying on the streets and dying under the Nevada Street Bridge, Taylor. And that's where if I can say one, and people know me in this town, and they're going to get to know me more, hopefully from this article, from the podcast, brother. I appreciate you. But my journey has been tough. Mm-hmm. But I am so, one thing, grateful. Hell is full of ungrateful ass people. I'm not one of them. Mm-hmm. My journey was to prepare me for what I'm doing right now. And that is to give back, to do what my mother and my daughter asked me to do. And to do what I shared with my brothers who died that day. I remember telling one guy, you know what, brother? I'll never forget this. A guy named, hell of a ball player too, Michael Evans, Marine, Camp Pendleton, who died that day. Hell of a ball player, man. I was like, dog, you need to get out the Navy and go to the NBA. Every ball he put up in the gym, Taylor, I was like, dog.
Just floating it.
Floating it. I was like, whew, boy, you crooked in one eye, but could just shoot the lights out. I was like, bro, you ain't in college? And he was like, I got like about 28 scholarships. Yeah, I kid you not. He was like, I just wanted to join the Navy and get some money.
A humble guy.
Check this out. He had gotten married, had a baby, needed some money. Mm-hmm. He was going to go to school, get the GI Bill, go to college. Good kid. He died that day. And I just don't know why. And I stopped asking myself why. I stopped asking why God took my daughter. Taylor, I know one thing, that we don't live on this earth forever. We don't. We don't get out of this alive. I don't know when my date is. I don't know when your date is, brother. But while I'm here, I am going to try to change lives. My day may be tomorrow, the next hour. But I am not going to die ungrateful.
Mount Carmel Veteran Service Center and the Veterans Voice podcast are partnered with Colorado Computer Support IT Pros to handle all of our computing and technology needs. They are veteran-owned, and they're your team for innovative, collaborative IT services and solutions to enhance and support your Colorado business. Here on the show, we talk a lot about business and entrepreneurship. As businesses grow, it's inevitable that you need to outsource IT services. When that time comes for your business, consider Colorado Computer Support IT Pros. Let's get into some specifics. Tell me about your work at the Springs Rescue Mission now. I know you got a group going down there.
Yeah, I've got a group going down there. I've been with Springs Rescue Mission now since last July as a Warrior Program Coordinator, working with veterans, first responders, any veteran. If you guys, need to talk to me, please, punch in your information to srchope.org and I'll reach out. But I also have a group at Springs Rescue Mission. Did I say that just now, or did I say no? I said Serenity Recovery Connections is where I'm at. Yep. Springs Rescue Mission is where I hold my Warrior Support Group every Monday. Every Monday, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
AM or PM?
Say again?
AM, PM?
PM. 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the mission is to work, as we've been talking for this last hour and a half, man, about carrying hope. Talking about your stories, talking about resources, finding you a solution if you're homeless, if you're not homeless, if you're looking for detox, if you're looking for rehabilitation, but if you're just looking for somebody to talk to, if you're looking for a coach. But if you're looking to help, come to my group.
Yeah.
Or contact me and reach out. You can find me here at Mount Carmel as well from 9 to 12.
Yeah, what days do you do that?
Wednesday, every Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 12. I've got a booth here. Right in the lobby. You can come see me then as well. And Mount Carmel, their front desk, they know how to reach me. After this, you're going to know how to reach me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But it's been an honor, brother.
That's for sure, man.
It's been an honor, man.
You're a true inspiration. This has been an honor talking to you, and I appreciate you getting vulnerable with me.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. And like I said, I knew I was good when you came downstairs, man.
Yeah.
Taylor, I appreciate you having me, brother.
Hey, we're not done yet. We always end with a story. You've told a lot of stories, but just a funny, comical story to lighten up the mood from maybe a time you were in the military to just, rap with some veterans.
Oh, wow. Well,
if you could narrow it down.
Many. Check this out. I got a story.
It came right up.
So we're in the Philippines and Subic Bay, Naval Base, right? This is the refueling station. I think it's closed now. But outside of Subic Bay, there was the town, and the town was called Olongapo City. You have to walk, once you get off the base, you have to walk through a jungle to get to Olongapo. It was like maybe a half a mile, seemed like it was a mile, but you're actually walking through the jungle. As soon as you get through the jungle, you see mini New York. I kid you not. Highlight, neon lights flashing, rock bars, jazz bars, R&B bars. I mean, first time there, and you can do anything and everything you want in Olongapo City. So one night, right? It's like four of us. We were getting wasted, right? So we got a hotel room, and guys who had been there, sailors who had been there before, had been telling me about monkeys pickpocketing your wallet.
Interesting.
Kid you not. They've been trained to pickpocket your wallet.
Yeah.
So keep your wallet in your front pocket. Or don't even keep it in your hand. They may take it out of your hand. You wouldn't even know. So I kept it in my front pocket. So we woke up, had breakfast, and I remember walking down. We're just riding jeepneys, right? So we get out in this one section of Olongapo, this long stretch, and we see 4 monkeys walking down the street. True story. 4 monkeys holding hands. It's a family.
Yeah.
They're on one side of the street, we're on the other. And one of my brothers teaching was like, there they go. There's a family of 4 monkeys. I was like, no, dude.
They're coming for your wallet.
Dude, you gotta be kidding me. So one of my partners goes across the street and just wants to see if he'll get pickpocketed, right? If this story is true. And, there's not too many people around, so he turns around and, he's kind of like, he puts his wallet in his back pocket. He's going to catch him, right? This is a true story. So he's standing, we're watching him, we're laughing, we're half wasted anyway. So the monkeys go by. They're holding hands, a family, walk by. One of them turns around and jumps on his back. The sailor's back, he jumps on his back, pulls him to the ground. Another monkey takes his wallet and runs. True story. I was like, they didn't pickpocket you. They whipped your ass. I have never, ever seen, if any sailors out there that's been in Olongapo City, he'll know this is true. Mm-hmm. Olongapo City is that wild.
Oh, man.
We laughed all night long.
Jeez. Man, that's a good one. That's a first.
We laughed all night long.
Holy cow.
I could tell you more stories.
I'm playing this out in my head right now. It's just getting funnier.
4 monkeys, brother.
Yeah.
They've been trained to do this.
They were distracted. I'm like, look at us. We're innocent, holding hands. And they turned around on them.
One jump. Kid you not.
Jeez.
Kid you not, man. True story.
Well, Keith,
Taylor,
this is awesome, brother. Thanks for coming on the Veterans Voice podcast and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, man.